I turned 70 on the 29th.
Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm James Just, and with me today is John Cameron. And we've got a bunch of interesting topics on tap today, John. We've got journalists, hoping to find about the threat to freedom of the press. We've got government and welfare stacking up against private charity, economic disaster in Netherlands, and maybe a food disaster in the Netherlands is kind of on the horizon. But let's start, and potentially killer robots in San Francisco, as kind of maybe we end the show on that one. But to start, we want to talk about Biden's spending spree. And Biden's spending spree is unprecedented, which is saying something coming off the heels of Trump.
Yes. Well, the Recovery Act, or what did they call it? Basically the giveaway that was supposed to be anti-inflationary, but was actually inflationary, and was really a green initiative in disguise that for some reason the Republicans signed off on. What's like most government spending, there's the spending that everybody knows about, and then through executive action alone, not counting the student loan thing, he's spent $500 billion. So not only the trillions, and the fact that we added $1 trillion in debt in about 6 months, went from 30 to 31 billion, almost overnight. And there's really, when you look at it, you could almost make a case. Well, if you were drunk, you could make a case that spending all that money during the COVID lockdowns might have made sense. Not spending all of it, but spending some. I'm not saying as libertarian I want to do that, but you could almost make a case for it. You can't really make a case for what they did in paying people 1 2/3 as much money not to work as they were paid working. But you could sort of like squint and have a couple of drinks and say, well, that makes sense, coming out of COVID. But everybody thought that we would basically, after everybody was freed from the COVID lockdowns, all this pent up, money these people were sitting on, and the fact that they hadn't been able to do anything or spend any money, and all the businesses could open back up. There was no reason whatsoever to throw more money on the fire of money that they already built, and they did that. And then on top of that, they decided to spend even more money in this bill that was designed to supposedly fight inflation by creating more debt and throwing more money on it. That's kind of like leaving the arsonists in charge of firefighting when they started the fire and they're supposed to put it out. But the off-the-book spending, the executive using this imperial executive power, that's what frightens me. The fact that these clowns that we keep electing are getting away with that. They just, if they can't get a bill through Congress, then they just make an executive order to go do whatever they want, and that's scary to me.
Yeah, the fact that we have so much of our government is now done by signature rather than following the process is actually far scarier than, there's politicians, they're spending money to get votes, right? They're buying votes at this stage. It's just what it is. They're paying off their constituents, which is why our country is so divided, because it's divided against who gets, who's sucking at which teat. And which teat.
I had to modify your language.
Yeah. And so we've got this whole system in place where, what was it? Eisenhower called it the military-industrial complex, and I've said it here before. We have all kinds of industrial complexes now tied to the government.
The homelessness industrial complex, the medical COVID industrial complex, the education teachers union industrial complex, the green complex is the most frightening, because they're, the Greens are scary, because they at least used to pretend like they were environmentalists, and we'd always say green on the outside, red on the inside. Now they don't even pretend. It's basically just red on the outside, and the green stuff is just simply an excuse to break all the rules and throw the Constitution out the window. You know, you can't do anything for else, but for the environment, for Mother Earth, you can do it.
Yeah.
And,
for Mother Earth or for the children, right? It's for not just Mother Earth, it's Mother Earth and the future children, right? It's always the future children.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering how future children benefit being saddled with $31 trillion in debt, and it's just going to keep going up and up and up. I mean, if you took your kids into your dining room and had a family meeting and said, you know what, Mother and I are going to go on a cruise. Now, unfortunately, you know, the house that you thought you were going to inherit, you can't do that because we're taking a loan out on the house to go on this cruise. But we're doing it so that you can stand on your own instead of, you know, us support. I mean, it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And the green stuff is the craziest. I mean, if you're interested in the environment, why would you not want more nuclear power and more natural gas? But what you want is more bird choppers that eventually you're going to have to pull down and get rid of, and you can't recycle any of that. All those batteries and battery cars, it's just crazy.
Oh, the batteries are going to be an environmental disaster coming up.
Already are. Yeah.
It's just going to be a huge environmental
when
disaster.
they catch on fire,
and who's going to
can't put it out?
And they're going to blame the capitalists for that, right? You know, they're going to blame the manufacturers and the people who.
Oh, speaking of, it's not on here, but
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it up because it's so hilarious. The state of California was putting together a hearing about why gas prices are so high. Mind you, this is the state of California that requires gas to be specially formulated in California, requires cars to have special emissions to use the special gas, has the highest gas taxes in the country, and they wanted the gas,
and don't forget
the oil,
general business taxes as well.
Yeah, the oil companies to come to this hearing, and you know what that would have been? A kangaroo court where they convinced everybody it was the oil company's problem, and the local paper, the commie rag, the Bee, was they were aghast that the oil companies decided not to show up.
Why would you participate in a show trial?
I'm not going to participate in a show trial. Yeah. Anyway.
I'm not going to go up there and be part of your future campaign spending, campaign commercials.
But that wasn't even on the list. But, you know, spend. You know, in the past, the Republicans at least paid lip service to being fiscally responsible. And Obama's huge spending led to basically a revolt called the Tea Party. Something curious is going on in the studio, and I don't know what it is. Anyway, now it's like people, well, we accept that. The government is just going to print money hand over fist, and there's nothing we do about it. I want to see somebody stand up and say, enough, you know, enough of this. Some politician have some chutzpah.
Well, there's a couple of them, but no one listens to them, right?
Well, there's three.
I know Amash has been out there talking about, but he's not elected anymore. So.
No.
Yeah, but he does know how things go. But talking about your environmental disasters, the Netherlands we'll kind of move on, is going to close about 3,000 farms to comply with EU environmental rules. And of course, these are small family farms. These aren't the big corporate farms that people like to complain about. What's going to happen is the corporate farms are going to take over these family farms, because they're the only ones who can afford to comply with these goofy EU rules. And so, to save the environment, they're going to destroy family farming in the Netherlands, and the rest of Europe is going to follow.
Well, it's actually even worse, because the Netherlands exports and creates an awful lot of food. And nitrogen fertilizer in the Netherlands is a minuscule, even if you go along with the green footprint stuff and carbon capture and the fact that nitrogen being released through fertilizer causes nitrogen is inert, so I don't know how it can be a problem. But then, you know, who's going to feed all the people that the Netherlands used to feed? And the nitrogen part of it is a minuscule, tiny bit. If Germany would have just left their nuclear power plants running instead of burning all the coal they had to burn to replace it, it would have been 100 times what the Netherlands is going to save by closing these farms. So, you know, if we would have put out the fires in California, and the fires we had that we could have easily prevented were the same as running an additional 14 million cars on our highways for 2 years. I mean, the decisions people are making are insane. They are not logical. That's what happens when radical environmentalists get into power, and they are in the EU, because the EU, flat out, just like the UN, has said that no, capitalism is wrong, it's bad, and we can't save the planet until we get rid of capitalism. And what they haven't figured out is reading a history book that shows that every time there's a socialist or communist government, it basically destroys the environment. So, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. What we talked about in a previous show, what was the country in the Far East that basically overnight illegalized what we would call industrial fertilizer, non-natural fertilizer, non-organic fertilizer, and people were starving within weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget. I knew we talked about that, but I don't remember the country. And if I do say one, it'll be wrong. So
one of those countries over there.
I don't want. Yeah, some one of those countries. They did this. It's not Thailand, but it's somewhere in that area. And they did, and they can cause mass starvation. And we know this is what happens. Mass starvation happens when you end up with centralized control of food production. It happens every single time.
It happened in the Ukraine when Stalin forced people off their farms onto collectives. 4 million, 6 million, 7 million Ukrainians starved. But he did that on purpose to get rid of the Ukrainians. So.
Yeah. And how many in China starved when Mao, the great leap forward?
50 to 100 million.
Yeah, it's just, starvation.
But we need this socialist communist world. Woo, because it's always worked. No, it hasn't.
It's always.
It's never worked.
It's for the people, but it's the little guy suffers.
Capitalism. Capitalism works.
It's just crazy.
Always, everywhere.
Yeah.
Always has, always will.
It is crazy. But speaking of working, does government welfare stack up against private charity?
You want a short segment? I just say no, and we can move on.
Well, it's pretty obvious, right? Just if you look at the way government procures budgeting, just simply by government budgeting, it tells you that they're not going to be as efficient.
Well, and then one size fits none. What private charities do is, because they have limited resources, they use them wisely. They look at each individual case and find out what people need and give that to them. Well, they don't give them what they think they need. They give them what they actually need. They handhold people. They promote nuclear families. We couldn't have that. But the general rule of thumb is that in government welfare or a government program aimed at helping the poor or the unhoused or whatever, 70% of the money goes to the bureaucracy, 30% goes to the people that they're trying to help, and since it's a one size fits none, they very seldom ever help anybody. And in private charity, 70% plus goes to the people who are in need, and only 30% goes to overhead. So it's an open and shut case. There's only on record by an organization that was supposedly objective, 3 out of 60 cases where government was more efficient at delivering help to those in need than charity, which I call the private sector. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bad. It's a bad track record. Really, really bad.
Yeah, they don't have much. There's not much incentive, and what happens?
No incentive. There's actually a disincentive, because governments are like any other animal. They want to grow and multiply.
And this is their focus, right? The difference between charities is they're laser focused on their mission, and that's it. They don't try to do things. They don't have these broad social goals, right? They're just, hey, I want to help feed these hungry people in my neighborhood.
The Jones family don't have a roof over their head. Let's find them a roof. They don't have enough food on the table. Let's put food on the table.
Yes, they're not.
Let's go ask the grocer, give us the food. Of course I'll give you the food. Yeah. I like the Joneses. Wish we could offer them a job. Oh, maybe I can. We need somebody to work the night shift cleaning up. I mean, that's how problems get solved. The government is just the government.
Yeah. Well, you fill out this paperwork.
Very bad. Would not recommend.
Fill out this paperwork, wait for an appointment to go see a caseworker. Hopefully the caseworker knows what they're doing and is not burnt out, and actually send you to some resources for you to go and follow through with, instead of just having you go follow through with the resources that are there and available. You create actually extra steps, and you can understand how the well-meaning people can fall for it. You understand how well-meaning people, well-meaning individuals say, "Oh, okay, I get it. Those things need to be done, and so we want You can see how people want the government to do it, but the reality is the government is terrible at this kind of thing.
Government is terrible at every kind of thing.
Yeah.
I challenge you to find something that the government is better at, other than being inefficient, ineffective, and spending money it doesn't have, than the private sector or even private charitable organizations.
Revenue collection. Government's great at revenue collection.
They're even bad at that.
It's the only thing California can do is collect taxes. And another thing they are good at, John, is suppressing free speech, which brings us up to our next section. Are real journalists starting to recognize that prosecuting Julian Assange, good Lord, I can speak, poses a grave threat to freedom of the press? The very freedoms. I am having trouble today here, John.
That's
the
all right.
very freedoms.
That's all right. I'll talk.
The very freedoms that these members of the press count on, they're willing to throw away because they don't like Julian Assange.
Well, they didn't like Julian Assange, but now the writing on the wall has become so clear that even the New York Times and 4 other major blamestream, whatever you call it, mainstream media organizations with a big history, and these are organizations that have what's really silly is these newspapers actually publish the information that Julian Assange got a hold of, and weren't prosecuted for doing that, but Julian Assange was. And they're starting to realize that it's really, at first they said, well, he's not a real journalist, so he doesn't get the protections we real journalists get. And it dawned on them recently, because the New York Times wouldn't have come out in support of his freedom of the press, that the government could just decide that even real journalists who work for the New York Times don't have that kind of protection. And if they publish stuff that shows us to be the liars, thieves, cheats that we are, we can throw them in jail, for 160 years, I think, is what Assange is facing. Yeah.
And there's nothing in the Constitution that says journalists are the ones who get freedom of speech. It's freedom of the press. And remember, at the time, the press was literally the press. It wasn't, corporate news gathering organizations. It was quite literally the printing press, the physical printing press. The ability to reproduce and spread ideas, whether they were true or not, is not relevant. You have the ability to discuss your ideas and spread them and advocate for them. You don't have the right to be violent, but beyond that, you have the right to kind of say what you want.
Do you remember, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Do you remember that?
Hey,
is that before your time?
I've got lots of broken bones in my life, and not once has a word broken them.
Word, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and people always say, oh, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Yeah, you can.
If you honestly believe you saw a flame of fire, you're allowed to.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
I don't know. They teach women not to yell rape when somebody's trying to rape them, but to yell fire. So do we prosecute them for, yelling out fire when there's no fire?
Yeah, because the point is of not yelling fire in a crowded theater is that you're not allowed to create panic. That's the idea. You're not allowed to disturb.
Hold on. Does that mean the government has to stop doing all the stupid stuff it's doing? Because it's certainly creating panic. No, the Assange thing is tough because he simply, I guess they're saying that some of the stuff that Assange released was espionage stuff that put people at risk. But did he put more people at risk through releasing information that showed the thievery and the lying and the spying and all the rest of that our government agencies were doing, or did he help more people by it? Is there a trade-off there? Well, and all those people he put at risk are spies. Should we be having spies everywhere spying and doing skullduggery and dirty deeds anyway? No, as a libertarian, no. That's not our job.
No,
it's not our government's job.
We're spying on the rest of the world, and then we complain when the rest of the world spies on us. Hello? You can't complain about what you do. If you're going to behave a certain way, and then other countries are going to behave the same way towards us, and then you're going to pitch a fit over it?
Yeah.
You better clean up your own act.
We'd be fine with the Chinese government launching drones to strike at people they label terrorists on U.S. soil, right? We'd be okay with that? No, we wouldn't, folks. we wouldn't. No, this is a farce, and I think maybe there is hope in the world. Maybe there are puppies. Maybe there are nice videos about kittens, and maybe the lamestream media is realizing that if the government prosecutes one person, they can just choose to prosecute all people.
Yeah, if you're
for whatever they want.
Yeah, if oh my God.
Prosecutorial. It's
Thank
a hard
you, John.
word.
My
It's a hard
God.
word.
Is what's
I don't
protecting
want to
you,
have to
you're
say
not
it
protected.
twice. No,
right?
no.
If that's what's protecting you, you're not protected at all. And speaking about not being protected at all, San Francisco, we're going to move down the street down to the San Francisco Bay Area, has allowed police to deploy killer robots in what they claim is certain exceptions. But I've seen this exception thing before. It's what they used to use for SWAT teams, that they now use for all kinds of things that weren't initially.
Well, every town of 6,000 people now has a tank and a SWAT team, and a hostage negotiator and all that other stuff. The militarization of the police, yet they don't prosecute people for crimes of property. They don't protect small businesses. They don't do any things that we think that police need to do. But somehow they need killer robots who aren't allowed to have weapons, but they are allowed to carry explosives in certain. Now, this is up for a vote. I don't think it's been finally approved. And I think the outrage throughout the world, even in the liberal lamestream press and media, is so strong that they might not do it.
Well, they did vote to do it. Now they may pull it back. Maybe one of those things, a preliminary vote and all that kind of how it goes. But
yeah, and they say only senior police officials may authorize the use of force with these robots. But that's a pretty nebulous phrase.
Yeah.
Who's senior? Is that a police sergeant or a police captain? Is that the police commissioner?
Is it the police chief, the assistant police chief? Yeah. Who gets to decide? Who gets to make that decision? And as we all have seen, once we give them that power, it becomes a slippery slope. They start to use it more and more often because once you have the ability, you're going to use it. You just are.
If you or I put explosives on anything, or even had explosives or made explosives, we'd go to prison for a very long time. But the people in San Francisco are fixing to attach them to killer robots. So it's going to be interesting. Another reason not to go to San Francisco, folks.
Yeah. Well, here's another reason not to not trust our potential leaders. The California gun data breach, they called it, was unintentional. Unintentional. It was just incompetence. They didn't follow their own rules, and they didn't know or follow the rules. Supposedly. And that's how come that's not better. The fact that Department of Justice officials don't know the rules or don't follow the rules is actually worse than corruption.
Incompetence, corruption.
This kind of incompetence,
we got a kakistocracy running
is
here.
Worse.
But the fact that this is the second data breach, right?
Yeah.
The first one was prior to the Supreme Court throwing out all these anti-constitutional or non-constitutional laws about carry and permits and all the rest of that. The second one of 160,000 folks on the list who applied for permit to carry was 5 days after the Supreme Court decision that threw out all that stuff. And just to add fuel to the fire of why we should allow the government to do anything, they didn't know how, nobody in the department knew how to fix it for 2 days. And when somebody looked at it and reported that it indeed was actual people's private data, they said, no, that couldn't be the case, and they didn't pull it down. And because somebody else looked at it and said, no, it wasn't private data, it's just general statistics. We put up statistics. But when they put up the database with the statistics, they put up the database with everybody's address and name. So I don't know if I believe that it was unintentional.
Well, even if it wasn't unintentional,
incompetence is,
If I park in front of my house, I get a $50 ticket, right? Where's their penalty? What kind of penalty do they get? If they're not going to pay a higher penalty for breaching the constitutional protections of 160,000 people, then what is going on? Why do I pay a higher price for parking in front of my house than they do for violating the constitutional rights of 160,000 people?
Well, no, they have the oops defense. If you work for the government and you do something wrong, you go oops, and that's all that happens. You just go oops.
What if I go oops? I forgot to put my permit on.
You don't work for the government, do you?
See, this is I'm telling you, John, this is driving me crazy.
You're not the only one that's driving crazy, bro.
Freaking crazy, man. I pay a higher price for parking poorly than these people do for violating constitutional protections of hundreds of thousands of citizens.
Well,
it drives me crazy. Well, one more thing to drive us crazy. We got like 3 minutes. The economy is already in a rolling recession, which they're finally admitting that the economy is in a recession, right? Which we knew, 4 or 5 months ago, right? It was 4 or 5 months ago we knew the economy was in a recession. They still aren't really admitting it. Now they're calling it a rolling recession. But
you know why? Because you know what rolls downhill, right? Sorry, folks.
Yeah, we can't say that on TV. But
what they're getting rid of in the Netherlands, fertilizer, but organic fertilizer rolls downhill.
It rolls downhill. Yeah. But could this rolling recession set stocks up for a better 2023? But if stocks are down a lot, well then 2023 is going to be better than the bottom. So so stocks will have a better 2023 than 2022. If you hit the bottom somewhere in early 2023, you will. As a general of thumb, your stocks will be better.
Well, I think with NASDAQ down 30%, there's a good chance it'll be up, off its low. But the problem is anymore you can't figure it out because government controls everything. And they can just do something by whim that will throw the brightest and best minds in the investment world out the window. They have no idea what to do because government just does this crazy stuff that makes no sense over and over again. And the people that pay are widows and orphans and we old folks who are trying to be retired soon.
Yeah, the continual changing of the rules every year, every 6 months. What is it? California passed 700 new laws or 1,000 new laws last year, and it'll be the same this year. How are we all supposed to comply with these things? How are we supposed to plan our lives for the next 5-10 years if the structure that we base our plans on changes every year?
I have no answer for that. Yeah.
Well, John, I was counting on you having an answer for that.
Okay. Well, you can't. Just you get used to chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to batten down your hatches, become isolated, self-focused, and concentrate on yourself. And
isn't that maybe that's the underlying goal? Maybe that's the overarching goal of all these government decisions are not really to do anything they say they're going to do. It's just make people scared, make people afraid, make people isolated so that they'll let people in government do this crazy stuff to protect them. Folks, government doesn't protect you, it hurts you.
Yeah, well, the size and scope of government has grown along with our inequality over the last 20, 30 years, right? If you look at the size and scope of government and the alleged inequality that has grown, it's parallel line. These lines are parallel.
Cause and effect. Cause and effect, folks.
Just saying. We are just about out of time. Thank you for joining me, John. Thank you for watching. And we want to remember to please love everybody.
Love everybody.
And good night.
Yeah. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. And love everybody.
Life is pretty simple sometimes.
Yeah. That's like 15 words.
You don't need thousands of laws to tell you to be nice to somebody.
No.